The story of Voyager 1 is one of the most remarkable tales of human ingenuity, resilience, and curiosity. A tale of a machine launched by humankind in 1977 to explore the outer planets, never intended to last more than a few years. Yet here we are, nearly half a century later, still receiving whispers from it. Whispers that were never supposed to reach us. Whispers that come from beyond the realm of human experience. Among these whispers are data packets, seemingly forgotten, buried deep within the Voyager's ancient systems, untouched for decades, and only now making their way back across the vast expanse of space. Some say this data is a long-lost message. Others believe it's a mere artifact. But what if it's something more? What if these forgotten fragments carry secrets we are not prepared to face? Voyager 1's journey was meticulously planned by NASA's top scientists. The mission was designed to last only as long as it would take to explore Jupiter and Saturn. After that, the Voyager would drift away, its systems gradually shutting down, slowly losing power until it could no longer speak to us. But Voyager had other plans. Against all odds, this silent wanderer found a way to stay awake, to survive, to persist. And it's in this persistence that a mystery began to unfold. A mystery that started with the return of forgotten data. In 1981, Voyager's team reprogrammed its systems to prioritize energy for the journey into interstellar space. This reconfiguration meant sacrificing parts of its memory, segments of its data storage that were considered irrelevant or redundant. The system cleared memory banks that had recorded data during its closest encounters with Jupiter and Saturn. These data banks were deactivated, locked away, inaccessible. But now, in 2023, data from these banks has started coming back, as if resurrected from a digital graveyard. What could this data be? Most believed it was simply old telemetry, benign and likely corrupted by decades of cosmic radiation. Yet, as NASA's Deep Space Network began receiving these packets, scientists noticed something strange. The information was coherent, not just noise, and seemed to contain readings that didn't match anything Voyager was programmed to observe. Numbers appeared that defied logic. New variables emerged, as if Voyager was reporting from a place unknown to human science. Scientists around the world were quick to begin analyzing the data, setting up complex algorithms to decode and interpret this unexpected transmission. There was skepticism at first. Some speculated it was simply a glitch, a symptom of Voyager's deteriorating systems. After all, Voyager 1 was a machine from the 1970s, operating in conditions beyond what it was ever designed for. It was bound to start acting strangely as it drifted deeper into interstellar space. Yet, as days passed, the transmissions grew clearer and more consistent. They seemed to pulse with an eerie regularity, almost like a heartbeat. But it was no heartbeat. It was something else entirely. Inside this forgotten data, researchers began to notice patterns. Patterns that seemed to mimic known phenomena, but not entirely. There were readings that appeared to be magnetic fields, yet vastly different from those in our solar system. Temperatures too spiked and plummeted at rates that would be impossible to achieve naturally. And then there was the radiation. Levels so high that they should have fried Voyager's circuits long ago. But Voyager continued transmitting, as if shielded by some invisible barrier. Panic and excitement spread throughout the scientific community. Was Voyager sending data from another dimension, another reality? Some scoffed at the idea, branding it a fantasy, a myth wrapped in the guise of science. Others, however, were captivated, their imaginations racing ahead, pondering the implications. Could Voyager 1 have encountered something beyond our comprehension? A cosmic phenomenon so alien that it broke the very fabric of space-time? And if so, why were we only now receiving this data? The story was too tantalizing to ignore, and soon the public caught wind of it. News outlets began covering the forgotten data phenomenon, spinning theories and sensational headlines. Social media exploded with speculation, conspiracy theories, and even apocalyptic predictions. Some believed that Voyager had crossed into a realm that humans were never meant to see, a forbidden zone of the universe. Others claimed that the data was evidence of intelligent life, alien beings who had intercepted Voyager and tampered with its systems to send a message back to Earth. But as the analysis of Voyager's transmissions continued, the mystery deepened. The data wasn't random. It followed a distinct recurring pattern. The numbers and variables matched the natural laws of physics, but only partially, as if they were reflecting a world where these laws had been twisted, distorted. Scientists were stumped, caught between the rational explanations of data corruption and the unsettling possibility that Voyager had indeed encountered something that defied human understanding. One night, a young analyst noticed an unusual sequence embedded within the data, a sequence that looked like coordinates. They ran the numbers through a mapping algorithm, overlaying the data onto a three-dimensional model of the galaxy. The result was astonishing. The coordinates pointed to a location well beyond the heliopause, the boundary where our solar system ends and interstellar space begins. But there was something else. The coordinates didn't just indicate a position, they suggested movement, a trajectory, as if something out there was guiding Voyager or calling it closer. The team was shocked. Could it be a star system? Or perhaps a rogue planet? Nothing in our charts matched the coordinates exactly, but the numbers were compelling. They had depth, density, like data collected from a specific location. Some researchers speculated that this could be the signature of a black hole or a neutron star, a gravitational anomaly that might warp space and time, explaining why Voyager's systems were acting in bizarre, unexplainable ways. But others feared it was more than that. They believed Voyager had stumbled upon something darker, a cosmic entity that humanity had not yet encountered. As NASA scrambled to make sense of the data, a disturbing thought lingered in the minds of the scientists. If Voyager 1 was indeed nearing an anomaly, a zone of unknown physics, what would happen to it? And more unsettling, what would happen to us if we continued listening? The transmissions persisted, carrying data from the edge of the unknown, but they began to change, subtly at first, then in ways that even the most optimistic scientists couldn't ignore. Signals came in at irregular intervals, as if Voyager was struggling to communicate, fighting against some unseen force. Static crept into the data, like faint whispers from a great distance. Sometimes, the signals would break entirely, leaving only silence, a silence that felt far colder than the vacuum of space. Then one day, the data stopped. There was nothing. Voyager 1 had gone silent, its steady voice silenced, as if it had crossed a final threshold. Days passed with no word, and a creeping dread settled over the mission control team. Had they lost Voyager for good? Had it reached the end of its journey, or had it fallen victim to something beyond our understanding? Yet just as all hope seemed lost, a final message came through. It was brief, a single, solitary signal, a burst of data so fragmented that it was nearly indecipherable. But after hours of analysis, the team uncovered a chilling message. A message that, according to Voyager's programming, should not have been possible. It was a line of code, a command sequence that had been dormant in Voyager's system for years, unused and irrelevant. But now, the sequence was active, running on its own, as if reanimated by a force beyond our control, and the message it carried was clear, simple, and haunting. Do not follow. Voyager 1, adrift in the boundless sea of stars, has been a silent observer of the unknown for over 4 decades. The probe, carrying the remnants of human messages and glimpses of Earth's existence, has seen things no human eye has ever witnessed. In recent months, it has been transmitting a sequence of cryptic data that NASA scientists initially dismissed as technical glitches or interference. But as the signals persisted, containing patterns and readings that didn't align with any known cosmic phenomena, a team of experts was assembled, driven by an uneasy curiosity. These scientists were determined to decode the fragmented messages sent from Voyager, believing it to be a final, vital message for humanity. What they would uncover, however, was something far darker than they could have anticipated. At first, the messages from Voyager 1 were faint, static-riddled fragments. The engineers and analysts assumed they were remnants of past data, bits and pieces of information long erased or deemed irrelevant. But as they pieced these fragments together, a strange pattern emerged. There were sequences that didn't match any of Voyager's original mission data. Coordinates, timestamps, gravitational readings, magnetic pulses, data that looked familiar but felt wrong, as if it were an imitation or a reflection of our known universe. The data didn't just depict the cosmos. It seemed to describe an altered version of it, a place that existed outside our understanding. One particularly strange fragment was a pulse reading, a sequence of numerical bursts that, when mapped out, formed a geometric shape, a repeating spiral that didn't match any known constellation or galactic structure. It was the kind of pulse pattern that could indicate intelligent origin, an idea that made even the most rational scientists uncomfortable. After all, what intelligence would exist so far from any known star or planetary system? Voyager 1 was meant to be humanity's emissary, carrying a message of peace and curiosity. But had it reached something that had been waiting for it? Despite the team's hesitancy, they continued decoding the incoming data, unable to turn away from the tantalizing mystery unfolding before them. The strange spiral patterns and pulse readings grew more frequent, as though Voyager was closing in on something, a destination it was never meant to reach. The team monitored each transmission, each pulse, hoping it would finally give a clear image, a piece of data that could be interpreted definitively. But as the transmissions continued, the data grew darker, unsettling. Temperature readings suddenly spiked, registering as impossibly high before plummeting to near absolute zero. It was as if Voyager were crossing a threshold, leaving behind the familiar physics of the known universe and entering a place governed by new, terrifying laws. Late one night, a young physicist noticed something strange embedded in the temperature data. Hidden within the erratic spikes and drops was another pattern, like an underlying heartbeat, a constant beat that didn't align with any natural phenomena. She adjusted the filters, stripping away the noise, and what she found sent a chill through the room. It was a sequence of numbers, repeated rhythmically, consistently. When translated, it revealed a message: listen. The entire team was called in to study the finding. Could this be a message left by an intelligent force? Or was it something Voyager itself had recorded? A warning perhaps, a relic from its journey through the unknown. Some of the scientists argued that this was mere data corruption, random interference transformed into seeming purpose by their own desperation to find meaning. But others, perhaps influenced by the late hours and the eerie silence of the lab, began to suspect there was something more to it. What if Voyager 1 was being used as a transmitter, relaying a message from a force that understood human language, or at least human concepts? Despite the unsettling implications, the scientists pushed forward, examining each line of data, each strange sequence. With each transmission, they found more evidence of interference, ghostly images layered atop the data, like faint reflections in dark water, shapes that resembled eyes, skeletal figures, twisting spires that seemed to emerge from nothing, only to disappear when scrutinized too closely. These images didn't match any known phenomena, nor did they resemble cosmic noise. They looked disturbingly organic, almost like faces caught in the shadows, frozen in expressions of horror or sadness. And yet the data persisted, these ghostly images recurring at random intervals, as if something was trying to communicate through the veil of distance and time. The project, once routine, took on an air of dread. Many of the scientists began avoiding the late-night shifts, leaving the transmissions to be monitored by automated systems. But there were still those who couldn't resist the pull, who returned night after night to witness the next wave of data, wondering if Voyager would reveal something definitive, a final, undeniable sign of intelligence, or perhaps a warning. And then, one evening, they got their wish. It started as a small transmission, a faint blip that at first appeared to be more interference. But as they analyzed it, they realized it was a series of coordinates, numbers that represented locations outside our galaxy. These coordinates weren't random. They mapped out a path, a line that extended far beyond the heliopause, beyond anything humanity had ever charted. And at the end of this line was something the team had been fearing, a gravitational anomaly, a region of space where time and space seemed to fold in on themselves, an impossible place that shouldn't exist according to any laws of physics. It was a void, an area where light itself seemed to be drawn in, as if swallowed by an unseen force. As they processed this information, another message came through, a burst of data containing sounds. When amplified, it resembled human voices, overlapping, murmuring words that were impossible to decipher but unmistakably human. Some scientists argued it was an auditory hallucination, an artifact of their equipment, but others weren't so sure. They listened to the recordings, and though they couldn't make out specific words, there was an unmistakable tone of distress, a sense of pleading or warning. The voices seemed to be calling out from an unimaginable distance, trapped somewhere beyond reach. The recordings grew louder with each transmission, as if Voyager 1 were approaching the source. And then there was silence. The silence lingered, tense, like the moment before a storm, broken only by the hum of equipment and the faint static of empty space. Then, without warning, another message appeared on their screens. It was in plain English, with words that should not have been possible, given Voyager's programming. It read, "Turn back." The room fell silent. Nobody knew how to react. The message was simple, almost banal, but there was something profoundly unsettling about it. Had Voyager encountered a force capable of understanding and communicating in human language? Or was it something else? An echo, a message left by other explorers who had traveled too far and lost their way? The scientists were faced with an impossible choice: continue listening, risking that they might receive something they were not prepared to understand, or heed the warning and abandon the transmissions entirely. Despite the fear, despite the growing sense of dread, the team decided to continue. They had come this far, and curiosity, as always, outweighed caution. But as they resumed decoding the data, they noticed that the transmissions were changing. The once coherent messages began to degrade, as if something were actively interfering with Voyager's systems, twisting the signals into something unintelligible. The patterns grew erratic, the images more chaotic, devolving into flashes of light and dark, symbols that no one could decipher. For days they received only fragments, broken pieces of a puzzle that no one could put together. And then one evening, a final message came through. This time, it was accompanied by a video signal, a fuzzy, almost imperceptible image that flickered and pulsed, as though struggling to breach the distance between worlds. At first, it was impossible to make out anything distinct. Shadows shifted across the screen, forms that seemed to twist and blur, coalescing into vague shapes, familiar yet alien, as if they were echoes of human faces distorted beyond recognition. The image grew clearer, focusing slowly on a single figure, a lone silhouette standing against a backdrop of stars. It was humanoid in form, though its proportions were wrong, stretched and elongated. It didn't move, didn't breathe, but simply stared, as though it were looking back at them from across an impossible gulf. The figure's eyes, if they could be called eyes, held an expression that no human could decipher, a look that seemed to encompass sorrow, anger, and something else, a depth of emotion that defied description. And then, as quickly as it had appeared, the image vanished. The team was left in stunned silence, each member grappling with what they had just seen. The image didn't make sense, didn't fit within any scientific framework, and yet they all felt it, an overwhelming sense of familiarity, as if the figure had been waiting for them all along. They had no answers, no explanations, only the unsettling realization that Voyager 1 had reached a place beyond their understanding, a place where the familiar became foreign and reality twisted into something unrecognizable. In the weeks that followed, NASA's team tried to reach out to Voyager to re-establish contact, but it was as if the probe had vanished, swallowed by the darkness. They sent signal after signal, but there was only silence, a void that seemed to echo back their own uncertainty and fear. It was as if the universe itself had closed the door, leaving them with nothing but questions and the haunting memory of a face that should not have existed.